Okay, 10 more seconds. 9, 8, 7. Oh, I like this swivel. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, back to your seats, please. Hold up your whiteboards. What do we got? Nothing here. Okay.
In my defense, they were dead.
All right, that's looking pretty good. Okay, the calculus teachers seem to be doing all right. Okay, so I thought I'd start off with doing a little bit of calculus just to give you a sense of... What's that? Oh, yeah, why didn't it follow me? Oh, you know, I think as I went in a circle. I got to go back around. Maybe it doesn't go 360. Yeah, there it comes. Thanks. Okay, so I just thought we'd do a little calculus to warm up so you can hear how it sounds. So taking the derivative of this function, functions have inner and an outer house. So this particular house is a power house. You live inside the house. This is you right here, and this is your house. And so all we have to do is a little something I like to call doubter. Dinner. Don't forget dinner. Dinner's very important every night. So you just take your exponent, multiply down. 2 times 3 is 6. Keep the inside the same. Don't forget to subtract 1. That leaves you with the 2. And what did I forget? Dinner. Derivative of the inner. Boom, boom. Derivative of that guy is 4. And there's your derivative. Okay. I could also simplify the 4 and the 6 could multiply and make it 24. 4x plus 1, quantity squared. Final answer. Now, for the integral, 24, 4x plus 1. Integrals are more fun because you get to pay the tax man. So the way you pay the tax man is first you have to locate the tax man. Tax man comes to the front door, knocks, says you got to pay your taxes. It's April 15th. Tax man's right here. He's always outside of the house. Remember, it's a power house. You live inside the house. We could also talk about that too. You, there you are, 4x plus 1. Tax man is 24. And we take the derivative of u. We call that u prime. Derivative of u is just 4. You divide that by your taxes to get your, well, you can do your standard deduction or itemized, but in this case, we'll just do standard deduction. 6 goes back in place to the 24. So now we've got a 6 with the quantity 4x plus 1 to the 2. Now we're ready to take the integral because we've paid the tax man. We add 1 and divide down. The inverse of the derivative. The derivative is multiply down, subtract 1. We add 1, divide down by that new exponent. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Inside always stays the same. What do you notice? Anybody? Go for it.
Use substitution.
That's another way to do it, use substitution. But what I mean is, what do you notice about the answer? Anybody? The answer of this integral. Yeah, what are you saying there? What's that? It's where we started. It was the derivative. We took the integral over here, and we ended up right back over here. Do you see it there? And there, and that's because derivatives and integrals are inverses of one another. Maybe I shouldn't wear this. That might be the sign. Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. What? Oh,
You want to turn it on?
it's on. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so thanks for coming. Where are we? Oh, that didn't work.
You got to click on the slide one more time because you clicked on the video last.
Oh, thank you. Here we go. So the title of this presentation is The Story of the Crawford Math Program and the Power of Self-Belief. One thing I'll tell you up front is, in this presentation, Crawford and Champs are kind of interchangeable because Crawford High School was a high school for about 50 years in San Diego until the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gave this huge grant, and they asked it to break up into 4 small learning academies. That's kind of when I came along. And the learning academy I was at was called Champs, which was an acronym. But then we ended up getting closed and going back to Crawford. So you'll kind of hear Crawford and Champs and just know that they're kind of the same thing. Here's how we're going to start. Everybody stand up. And you're going to learn our chant. So in order to be able to do our chant, our ritual, you have to get your hands in the clapping position. So hands! Here we go. And when you see a single X, you'll do a single clap. So let's practice our single clap. Clap after my smack. A little louder, and all together. Here we go. Good. Now let's practice the double clap. I should have put it in there, but with the double clap, the second X is actually supposed to be a capital, and the first one's supposed to be a lowercase. So it's like clap, clap. Okay, the second one's louder than the first. See the double X right here? So let's try that again. Listen for the 1 or the 2, okay? Okay, now we do the double-double. Double-double right here, that's the only other one you really got to know, the double-double. So it's like this. And you clap that out. So try that. Okay, so here we go. We're going to try to put the whole thing together. We're going to come back to this later, so you have some more chances to practice it. And later, you're going to march while you practice. So get your practice down now. It's a little harder to do when you march. Although when you see 3 dots, that means I'm playing and you're not clapping. And when you hear like a pause, and I'll come up and I'll smack when you should be clapping, that's when you clap. Okay, so just watch the dots, wait for the X, know if it's a single or a double-double, and when that comes, be ready to do it. Here we go. Ah, there's a double. Oh my God. I typed it wrong. Wait, how did I do that?
Did we get extra credit?
I think we do.
Oh my God, that's really bad. Okay, I guess that's an extra X. So, no, we can't. I have to edit it. I just have
Well,
to.
you can add it to access too.
I'm sorry. Okay. Let's try that. Back to the top. Here we go. Wait.
We're at the double. No, we did 2 doubles.
I think I was supposed to have another double-double. Another double, but I put in a single. That must be what I did. Okay, that makes sense. Sorry. Oops. Okay. This, I think, is right. First time through with this presentation. From the top! Wait for it. And then we go to the second round, and be ready for the yell out Crawford when we get to the end. Crawford! All right, sit down. Good job. So this is a little chant that we do in class, and it all started because I read the famous mathematician, Jaime Escalante, the famous math teacher, used to do something called a marching band problem in his class. And I had this drum that I got randomly, and somehow I just connected the two, and I thought, oh, for marching band problems, I should take out the drum. And then this little, if you've ever been in marching band, like that's a very common marching band rhythm. And I used to be in marching band in high school, and I was a trumpet player, but I remember that. So here we go. Oops. We're going to start out with a little video to give you a sense of what the Champs Math program is all about. So enjoy.
Student body definitely is low income. 95% of the students here qualify for free or reduced lunch. They represent what the world is really like, the diversity of the world. Not only the world, but the future of the world. The world is mixing together.
What do we do with the variable? So is this going to be x squared? No.
I got involved in this school a few years ago because I noticed some really powerful instruction that was happening in the algebra class.
This is where students, they either get this stuff right now, and they get confident with it, or they don't really take the time to get really good at this, and then they don't like math. They get frustrated and stop coming to school.
Yeah, basically copied everything Mr. Mott does from his curriculum plan to his instructional strategies. Infused some of my own things and took some things from a number of other great teachers that I had encountered and observed. And I'm just using them. They're just things that work.
And we're going to spend a lot of time with this and make sure that everyone really gets it.
You know, what used to happen here was my kids would get a pretty good experience in my class, and then they move on to the next couple classes, and it was like they just went right back off the cliff.
Perfect.
And having done
So I also like to use the bell, and I'll just mention that for a second, for transitions and kind of training my students like dogs. so that when the meat is coming, they start to salivate. And so they know that when the bell rings, it's also time to, a lot of times it's like they're working and they're busy, and then all of a sudden they hear that. And I like having that rather than, hey, you guys, excuse me, everyone, look up here. Like, that just got so old for me so fast. So this presentation is about the story of the Champs Math program, but it's actually a story of stories, and it's a story about stories as well. So we're going to start there first by talking about stories. There have always been stories. Stories are our oldest form of communication. Before there was writing or telecommunications, printing press, I mean, people passed on knowledge through verbally, through stories. And there was someone, a very famous mythologist. Raise your hand if you've heard of Joseph Campbell. Okay, a few people. Joseph Campbell was a professor at Sarah Lawrence College for 38 years in like the 50s through the 80s. And he made it his life's mission to study all of the stories and myths of all time. They could be stories and myths of creation or stories and myths of adulthood. And he studied all of them across the whole globe, across time, and he discovered that they all followed a very similar pattern. And so if there were English teachers in the room, you would know like about the hero's journey. That's something that's taught in English class. And so it just so happened that the guy that I teamed up with for this math program, you saw him in that video, Mr. Munn, he was very much a reader and a fan of Joseph Campbell and a believer in the power of the hero's journey. And so the hero's journey, again, just encapsulates all the myths and all the stories of all time, talks about the importance of symbols, secret helpers or aid, and rituals and rites of passage in any story. And so when we began to build our math program, we built it very intentionally on this idea of using myth, story, symbolism, rituals, and helpers to aid us along the way. And so the story of the Champs Math program is really 3 stories in one. So story number 1 is the story of Jaime Escalante. And in case you're not familiar with his story, here's a brief little video about that.
We close tonight with the story of a life spent making a difference. As we told you last night, Jaime Escalante died yesterday. He was Los Angeles.
And so, interesting couple of things about Escalante. He passed away about 5 years ago, and on one of his last days he was alive, they had a news camera in his home, and they got this on film, but I didn't want to put another clip in there. But one of his last teachings that he put out to the camera was, see if I can get it right. He said, "You don't count the number of times you hit the floor, you count the number of times you get up." And he was a big inspiration, I think, for a lot of teachers. And this is a movie that's very commonly shown throughout schools. But I was so moved by the guy, and I wanted to do what he did, that I wanted to track him down. And I found out that he was coming to San Diego. And so, oh, that's not this part. Oh, I think I just gave away something, but I guess I'll tell it later. I ended up meeting Jaime Escalante, which you'll see about later. The second story that we're going to talk about today is my story and our story with the Crawford Math Program, but specifically my own personal part of it. I became a teacher in 2003 was my first year of teaching, and I had been trained in New Hampshire at Keene State College, and I went to Washington for a year, did student teaching, and I came to San Diego. I was all excited to become a teacher, and it was really hard. It was like the hardest thing I'd ever done. And at the end of the first year, I was feeling like so exhausted, but I was glad I made it through. And then at the end of the second year, which was really hard to get through, I think it was 14 sick days that second year. And I was telling people earlier, I used to take them on Wednesdays just so I could break up the week because I couldn't do more than like 3 days in a row. I intentionally tried to get on a jury, which I did. I was successful. I got called for jury duty, and I went in and I tried to answer the questions in such a way that they would pick me. They picked me, and it was a 2-week trial, so I got to be out of the class for 2 more weeks. That was like the only way I limped through that school year. And I'm not proud, but that's what it was, and I didn't want to break my contract. I was worried about the repercussions of quitting. So anyways, after 2 years, after 2 years, you're 1 day away from tenure. You just have to step on campus that first day of the 3rd year. I couldn't take it. I quit over the summer. I was vacationing in Southeast Asia, and I left the profession. And I was gone for a couple of years. I started substitute teaching because I needed to make money again, and I ended up at Crawford High School one day, substitute teaching. And I met Mr. Munn, and I actually saw his test scores in a staff meeting, and I would turn to the guy next to me like, what is going on in algebra? I've never, because I used to teach algebra before I quit, and they were like, oh, that's Mr. Munn, you should go talk to him. So, I met him. I was subbing, and the kids had they had a good feeling about me, so they started telling the other teachers and the principal, you should hire this guy, Mr. Winn. So I ended up getting a part-time job there as a geometry teacher, and I was back in the profession. But I only agreed to that job, and I remember this like so clearly. I was in like the break room with Mr. Munn, and he was like, we'd really like you to be a geometry teacher. You know, will you come back and do this next year? And I was like, I'm only going to do it if I can just copy everything you do. That's it. Can you just give me all your materials? Just tell me what to do, because I have given up. And if I copy you and it doesn't work, then I'm done for good. That's what I told myself in my head. And so he was on board. Oh yeah, copy me. So I began copying him, and then I began to seek out other master teachers, because I soon discovered that that was really, what it was all about. And so this leads me to a quote by Joseph Campbell, and there he is up there. He passed away, I think, in like '88 or something like that. If you've ever heard of the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, he was someone who would go there very often and speak and run seminars. But he says, "We have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path." And follow that thread I did. There's the photo. We'll get back to that. First I did with Carl, and I'm not going to show this whole video, but I want you to just get a little feel for Mr. Munn. This one I had to, I couldn't embed it, so I'm just going to show it from the teaching channel. I think I'm going to show it from the teaching channel. Okay, well maybe while that's loading, I'll go to the next one, which is Jaime Escalante. So I was telling you earlier that I found out that he was coming to San Diego, and he was going to be down at Hilltop High School on a Saturday morning, and just like meeting and greeting and giving a speech. And I was like, oh man, this is like I think it was like my first year of teaching calculus, and I was like, this is like stars aligned. I got to go meet this guy. And so I won't lie, I was a little bit hungover that morning, and I wasn't even sure I really wanted to go. And I ended up going late, and I missed his talk. But I did end up dragging myself down there, and there's a big line of people waiting to meet him. And I intentionally kept waiting behind, and I got to the end of the line so I could talk to him last. So I got to have like a good 10 minutes with him. And I was like, talking to him and telling him like what I was doing, and I remember saying, so is there like one piece of advice you'd give me, for teaching calculus? I'll never forget. He's like this like hunched over old man, and he was like, fractions. They got to know their fractions. And anyways, I had this picture up in my classroom. My kids just thought it was like the coolest thing that I met Escalante. And I would always tell them like, oh yeah, Escalante told me to do this and told me to do that. And they just thought that was the coolest thing. Here's a little preview of Mr. Munn.
Hi, my name is Carl Munn. I teach 9th grade algebra on the Crawford Educational Complex at the School of Champs. There is a great need here. This particular population of students is 99% below the poverty level. Their English level is very, very low. But if you provide the type of support so that they feel comfortable, they're going to be successful, they start to trust you, you can get them there. Today's lesson on note-taking system is equal to a way of developing a sense of criticism.
Okay, we're going to stop that there. I just wanted to give you a little peek there of him. And I wanted to mention, too, actually, to Lindsay and anyone else who's in that presentation, Mr. Munn is the teacher who gets all of the students who leave our new arrival center, and they go to his math class. Okay, so the third master teacher that I didn't actually seek out, but who sought me out, and this is what happens in a lot of stories and a lot of myths, is that the secret help comes just when you need it and you didn't even know that it was going to be there. Raise your hand if you've seen the Hunger Games. Hunger Games, the first one, okay? Do you remember a part, and this happened throughout the movie, but there was a part in that movie where Katniss was wounded and she was in the woods, and then like this little healing balm came out of nowhere. And if you're a very rational, logical person, you're like, that couldn't happen. That's not logical. But that's the nature of secret help, is you don't know what it's going to look like, you don't know when it's going to come. But if you're on the hero path, it always comes. And Becky was that person for me. Becky was volunteering in Cindy's class because Becky was the former AVID regional coordinator and a former math teacher of 40 years and had retired. But she was bored and she wanted to help out and she loved Crawford, so she was in Cindy's class and her kids were all doing calculus. And they were like, we need help, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, who's this calculus teacher? And Cindy said, oh, it's Mr. Winn. You should go down there to his class and go visit him. So she went down thinking I was going to be Asian, because like Nguyen, and I wasn't. But she came in and started volunteering, and she just had so much fun in class. And we have a lot of fun in class that she just wanted to be there every day. So for the next 4 years, Becky volunteered 40 hours a week every single week for 4 years. She won the District Volunteer of the Year Award, but she's a huge part of what made this so possible. Jaime Escalante really provided me with the team approach and the team mentality and self-belief. Carl was really the one that taught me about how to teach self-belief and design lessons to be effective. Becky pretty much taught me everything else. Nuts and bolts of ins and outs of teaching, grading, recording, giving feedback, structuring a class, reaching out to community. She taught me so much miscellaneous stuff, and this was just the gift that just showed up in my class one day. So that was the third master teacher that came along. The fourth and final master teacher, the secret helper that helped me along my path, was a guy named Sudhir Karandikar. And I met Sudhir through Google, because I went to Google and I typed in best calculus teacher. And this is the video that I found. I sifted through a few that I could tell were teachers that were teaching at different populations, but this was the video that I was like, I gotta go meet that guy.
Sudhir Karandikar and his students from Mount Pleasant High School in San Jose have been chasing a record to have the highest number of students pass the AP Calculus test in their school district. Passing the AP, the Advanced Placement Test, will mean automatic college credit and bragging rights.
A lot of hard work and a lot of crying and encouragement from my teacher.
Outside of class time, the average kid in here probably put in between 5 to 10 hours per week, all the way for 2 years.
Before Karandikar arrived at Mount Pleasant, only 47 students had passed the test in a span of 9 years. But in 1 year, Karandikar managed to help 43 out of 51 students pass the AP Calculus test. He became so popular that last September, 104 students enrolled in his class. This is home video of his students on one of the testing days. That's Karandikar delivering a pep talk. And today they found out 91 students passed, short of the 103 needed to beat the all-time record. But the school did beat the percentage record. 88% of Karandikar's students passed the test.
So I'm very, very proud of you guys. Today is one of the happiest days of my life. Right? Without everyone and all the unity that we had, I don't think we would have came even close to 91. So there was definitely a lot of camaraderie in this.
Today his students are better at calculus, and Karandikar achieved his dream of teaching calculus at a low-performing high school.
There's talent.
So I looked the guy up on his school website. I found his email address. I emailed him and I said, can I come talk to you about what you do? And